Get your ghetto ass out of first class. Jessica Martinez snatched Eleanor Washington's boarding pass and crumpled it into a ball. She tossed it over her shoulder like trash. Eleanor's reading glasses slipped off as she recoiled from Jessica's aggressive lean-in. The frames hit the aircraft floor with a sharp crack. Jessica stepped on them deliberately. The lens shattered under her heel. Whoops! Her smile was pure venom. Eleanor Washington, 67, remained seated in 1A. Her hands found the armrests, gripping them steadily. She looked down at her destroyed glasses, then backed up at Jessica with quiet dignity. Other passengers watched in stunned silence. Someone's phone emerged, recording. Eleanor said nothing. Her composure never wavered. Have you ever been judged so wrong that the truth would destroy everything? Friday, 3:52 p.m., American Airlines Flight 447, LAX to JFK. Eleanor reached for her purse, fingers steady despite the chaos. Inside, nestled between her wallet and reading case, lay a pristine boarding pass, the backup copy. She unfolded it slowly. Seat 1A, first class, purchased and confirmed. Miss Martinez. Eleanor's voice cut through the cabin noise like silk over steel. Perhaps you'd like to examine this. Jessica glanced at the new boarding pass and laughed, a harsh, grating sound that made other passengers cringe. Lady, I don't care what fake ticket you printed at home. This is first class. Jessica's volume increased deliberately. You can't afford to sit here. A businessman in 2C whispered to his wife. Probably stole someone's confirmation number. The woman nodded knowingly. They always try this stuff. Eleanor's phone buzzed. A text message appeared on her lock screen. Board meeting moved to 9 a.m. tomorrow. Marcus. She typed back quickly. Flight delayed. Handle the 5 p.m. board call without me. 3:54 p.m. Tom, I need you up here. Jessica's voice crackled through the intercom. We have a situation in first class. Tom Bradley, a 15-year veteran supervisor, appeared within minutes. His practiced eye swept the scene. Well-dressed older black woman, destroyed glasses on the floor, crumpled boarding pass evidence. He'd seen this dance before. Ma'am, I'm Tom Bradley, cabin supervisor. Is there a problem with your seating? Eleanor showed him the intact boarding pass. No problem on my end, Mr. Bradley. I'm seated exactly where my ticket indicates. Tom examined the document. Seat 1A. Valid confirmation code. Current date. Everything appeared legitimate, but... Sometimes the system double books, he said carefully. We can upgrade you to first class on the next flight. Premium economy for now. Mr. Bradley, I'm already in first class. This is my assigned seat. A passenger behind them started live streaming. The camera caught Eleanor's composed face, the scattered glass, Jessica's crossed arms. Y'all seeing this discrimination happening right now on American Airlines? The streamer whispered. This lady got a first-class ticket and they are trying to kick her out. The viewer count climbed. 50, 200, 1,000, 3:56 p.m. Eleanor opened her wallet to retrieve her ID. As she did, something black and weighty caught the light. An American Express Centurion card, the legendary Black Card, reserved for customers spending over $250,000 annually. Tom noticed. His confident demeanor flickered. Ma'am, if I could just verify your identification. Eleanor handed over her driver's license. Eleanor Washington, Beverly Hills address. The details matched her boarding pass perfectly, but Jessica wasn't backing down. Tom, look at her. Does she look like she belongs in first class? Jessica's voice dropped to a stage whisper. These people always cause trouble, probably using miles she didn't earn. The live stream viewer count hit 3,000. Comments poured in. This is disgusting. Sue them. American Airlines showing their true colors. 3:58 p.m. Eleanor's phone rang. The contact name flashed briefly. Marcus, Son. She declined the call and sent a text. In a situation. Will call later. Tom was studying her boarding pass again, looking for any flaw, any excuse. The paper was legitimate. The seat was hers. But company culture ran deeper than policy. Ma'am, I'm going to need to call the captain. This might take a few minutes. Take all the time you need, Eleanor replied. Her voice remained level, professional. I'm not going anywhere. More passengers pulled out phones. The live stream audience grew 5,000, 8,000, 12,000. An elderly white woman in 3B spoke up. Excuse me, but this is ridiculous. She has a valid ticket. Mind your business, Gladys, Jessica snapped. We handle disruptions our way. 4 p.m. gate agent Patricia Carter's voice echoed through the cabin. Flight 447 departure in 10 minutes. Final boarding call. The pressure was mounting. Delays cost money. Passengers grew restless. Eleanor checked her Rolex, a gift from her son 3 Christmases ago. Platinum and understated, like everything else about her style. I have an important meeting in New York, she said quietly. I'd prefer to handle this quickly. Tom Bradley made his decision. He reached for the intercom. Captain Stevens, please come to first class. We need management approval for passenger removal. Eleanor's eyebrows raised slightly. Removal? Mr. Bradley, I haven't violated any regulations. I'm seated in my assigned seat with valid documentation. Company policy, ma'am. When there's a seating dispute, the captain makes the final call. The live stream hit 15,000 viewers. Number American Airlines discrimination started trending in Los Angeles. Eleanor reached into her purse again. This time, she pulled out a business card and held it between 2 fingers. She didn't show it to anyone, just held it, like a chess player contemplating her next move. Very well, she said. Let's see what the captain decides. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus calling. She let it go to voicemail. 4:01 p.m. Captain Mike Stevens emerged from the cockpit, his gold stripes catching the overhead lights. 15 years with American Airlines had taught him to handle difficult passengers swiftly and decisively. He took one look at Eleanor Washington and his expression hardened. Another entitled passenger trying to game the system. What's the situation, Tom? The passenger refuses to move to her correct seat. Claims she belongs in first class. Tom handed over Eleanor's boarding pass and ID, speaking louder than necessary. Been causing problems for 10 minutes now? Stevens barely glanced at the documents. The passenger looked respectable enough, but he'd seen it all before. Stolen confirmation codes, fake boarding passes, sob stories about misunderstandings. Ma'am, we have a schedule to maintain. I need you to gather your belongings and move to the economy immediately. Eleanor remained seated, hands folded calmly in her lap. Captain Stevens, my ticket is valid. My seat assignment is correct. I'm not moving. The cabin fell silent except for the hum of phones recording. The live stream audience had swelled to 25,000 viewers. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read. Security to Gate 12A, Stevens spoke into his radio. We need passenger assistance on Flight 447. Possible fraud situation. Jessica Martinez smiled smugly. Finally, someone with authority to handle this woman properly. 4:03 p.m., 2 airport security officers boarded the aircraft. Officer Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran with kind eyes, sized up the situation instantly. Officer Kim, newer to the job, looked uncomfortable with the spectacle. Ma'am, you need to cooperate with the flight crew, Rodriguez said, his hand resting casually on his radio. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Eleanor looked up at him calmly. Officer Rodriguez, I assume you'd like to see my documentation before making any decisions. She handed him her boarding pass and ID. Rodriguez examined them carefully, checking the confirmation code against his phone app. Everything appeared legitimate. Seat 1A, purchased 3 days ago, paid in full. Captain, Her paperwork checks out completely. Seat 1A, first class, valid purchase. I don't care what the paper says, Stevens snapped. Look at this disruption. She's been arguing with my crew for 15 minutes. Remove her. A businessman in 2C whispered loudly to his wife, probably bought the ticket with stolen credit cards. They always do. His wife nodded knowingly. Should have upgraded her properly instead of sneaking into first class. Eleanor heard every word. She said nothing. The live stream comments exploded. This is insane. Call the news. Where's the ACLU? American Airlines is finished. Someone find out who she is. 4:05 p.m. American Airlines supervisor Patricia Carter rushed onto the plane, tablet in hand and sweat beading her forehead. She'd been monitoring the situation from the gate and watching the social media storm building in real time. What exactly is happening here? Carter demanded, slightly out of breath. Jessica stepped forward eagerly, her voice dripping with professional concern. Passenger boarded with questionable documentation, refuses to comply with crew instructions. She's been disruptive and argumentative from the moment she sat down. Eleanor spoke quietly. Miss Carter, I'd like to request a private conversation with Captain Stevens. This situation can be resolved quickly with proper management. No private conversations, Stevens replied curtly. You move now or security removes you. Those are your only options. Chen checked her tablet nervously. The hashtag American Airlines discrimination was trending nationwide. The live stream had reached 35,000 viewers. Her corporate training kicked in. Contain, minimize, deflect. Ma'am, Carter said carefully, we can offer you a full refund plus a voucher for future travel. First-class accommodations on tomorrow's first flight. Would that be acceptable? I'm not interested in future flights. I have business in New York tonight that cannot be rescheduled. What kind of business? Jessica interrupted with a sneer. Job interview? Welfare appointment? Officer Kim shot Jessica a sharp look. Even he recognized that comment as crossing a line. 4:07 p.m. Eleanor's phone rang again. Marcus called for the third time in 5 minutes. She declined and texted. Still handling the situation. Don't worry about me. Her son texted back immediately. Mom, call me now. This is urgent. I'm seeing reports online. Eleanor studied the message, her composure cracking slightly. Marcus had seen the live stream. Her protective son, always worried about her safety, was probably mobilizing half of Los Angeles right now. She looked around the cabin. Security officers flanked her like she was a criminal. Flight crew blocking the aisle. 40 passengers recorded every moment for their social media feeds. The captain glaring down with unconcealed irritation and racial bias written across his face. She made a decision. Captain Stevens, I'd like to make one phone call before we proceed. Absolutely not. We're already delayed because of your theatrics. One call, Eleanor repeated firmly. Then you can do whatever you feel is necessary. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Something about this woman's calm confidence unsettled him. Captain, maybe we should let her... No calls! Stevens's voice echoed through first class. Security, escort this passenger off my aircraft immediately. The passengers in economy craned their necks to see the commotion. Some stood up for better camera angles. 4:09 p.m. The situation reached its crescendo. Eleanor found herself completely surrounded. 2 security officers positioned on either side of her seat, Captain Stevens blocking the aisle ahead, arms crossed, Jessica and Tom behind, cutting off any retreat Patricia Carter filming with her tablet for incident documentation. 40 passengers with phones capturing every angle, 50,000 people watching the live stream worldwide. The oxygen felt thin. Conversations halted. Even the aircraft's ventilation system seemed to quiet, as if the plane itself held its breath. Eleanor sat perfectly still in seat 1A, hands folded in her lap. The business card remained hidden in her purse, along with secrets that could shatter careers and end this nightmare in seconds. But she waited. Sometimes the most powerful move was patience. "Ma'am, stand up right now," Rodriguez ordered reluctantly. "We're ending this situation." Eleanor looked directly into the live stream camera. Her voice carried clearly across the cabin, each word chosen with surgical precision. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing is precisely why systematic change is necessary in corporate America. This is how paying customers are treated when assumptions override evidence." Stevens exploded. "That's it! I've had enough of your speeches. Remove her immediately." Rodriguez hesitated. Something in Eleanor's tone, calm, measured, almost executive, gave him serious pause. This wasn't how disruptive passengers usually behaved. "Ma'am, I really don't want to physically remove you from this aircraft." Eleanor smiled slightly, and for just a moment her mask of a vulnerable elderly passenger slipped. Something steely and powerful flashed in her eyes. "Officer Rodriguez, I appreciate your professionalism more than you know, but I think we're past the point where physical removal will be necessary." She reached for her phone with deliberate slowness. 4:11 p.m. "I said no calls!" Stevens lunged forward to grab the device. Eleanor's reflexes were quicker than anyone expected. She pulled the phone back and dialed a number from memory, not from her contacts, but from memory. The phone rang once, twice. "Please answer," she said softly. Stevens reached for the phone again, but Rodriguez caught his arm firmly. "Captain, let her make the damn call. This whole thing is being live-streamed to 50,000 people. You don't want footage of yourself grabbing a phone from an elderly passenger." The third ring echoed through the silent cabin. Click. "Hello?" A male voice, crisp and authoritative, slightly distorted through the phone's speaker. Eleanor's voice remained steady. "Marcus, it's your mother. I'm on flight 447, and we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Long pause. "Mom? Where exactly are you right now? Are you safe?" Captain Stevens felt something cold crawl up his spine. The name Marcus sounded familiar, very, very familiar. "I'm sitting in Seat 1A, First Class, American Airlines Flight 447. There seems to be some confusion about my seating assignment." Another pause. Much longer this time. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had changed completely. "Mom, put whoever's in charge on the phone." Right now, Stevens's face had gone ashen. The live stream chat was moving too fast to read. "Marcus who? Wait, is that? Oh my God. No freaking way. Is this really happening?" Eleanor looked up at Captain Stevens with something that might have been pity. "Captain Stevens, the gentleman on the phone would like to speak with you personally." Stevens stared at the phone like it was about to explode. Who is this?" Eleanor's smile was small but absolutely devastating. "Captain Stevens, I'd like you to meet my son." 4:12 p.m. Stevens reached for the phone with trembling fingers. The entire cabin watched in absolute silence. "This is Captain Mike Stevens, American Airlines Flight 447. The voice on the other end was ice-cold professional. "Captain Stevens, this is Marcus Washington." "Do you know who I am?" Stevens's throat went dry. Marcus Washington. The name hit him like a freight train. Every American Airlines employee knew that name. Mr. Washington, sir. I'll take that as a yes. "Now, Captain Stevens, I want you to explain to me very carefully why my mother is calling me from your aircraft about a seating problem." The phone nearly slipped from Stevens's sweaty palm. Around him, the cabin had become a tomb. Even the live stream chat had gone eerily quiet. "Sir, there was a A misunderstanding about seating assignments. A misunderstanding? Marcus's voice could have frozen oxygen. Captain, put me on speaker. I want everyone to hear this. Stevens looked around desperately. Patricia Carter nodded frantically, understanding the gravity of their situation. He pressed the speaker button with a shaking finger. 4:13 p.m. Marcus Washington's voice filled American Airlines Flight 447. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Marcus Washington, Chief Executive Officer of American Airlines. I sincerely apologize that you're witnessing what appears to be a systematic failure of our customer service standards. The cabin erupted. Gasps, dropped phones, passengers frantically Googling Marcus Washington, American Airlines CEO. The live stream viewer count exploded past 75,000. Eleanor sat quietly in seat 1A, watching the world shift around her. Mom, Marcus continued, his voice softening. Are you okay? Have you been hurt or threatened in any way? I'm fine, sweetheart. Just disappointed. That single word, disappointed, carried more weight than any threat ever could. Jessica Martinez had gone completely white. Tom Bradley looked like he was having a heart attack. Patricia Carter was furiously typing on her tablet, probably updating her LinkedIn profile. Officer Rodriguez stared at Eleanor with new understanding. Officer Kim had quietly stepped back, wanting no part of whatever was about to happen. 4:14 p.m. Captain Stevens, Marcus's voice returned to Arctic professionalism. I want you to walk me through exactly what has transpired on my aircraft. Stevens stammered through a pathetic explanation. Sir, there was confusion about the boarding pass. The crew followed standard procedure for seating disputes. Standard procedure? Marcus's tone could have stripped paint. Captain, what does Federal Aviation Regulation 382.7 state about passenger discrimination? Silence. I'll help you out, Captain. It states that carriers cannot discriminate against passengers based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, or ancestry. Are you familiar with this regulation? Yes, sir, but are you also familiar with the American Airlines Company Policy Manual, Section 4.12, which I personally helped draft? Stevens was drowning. Sir, we were just... Section 4.12 states that valid ticketed passengers cannot be removed without documented safety violations or criminal activity. Captain Stevens, has my mother committed any crimes? 4:15 p.m. The question hung in the air like a blade. Everyone knew the answer. No, sir. Has she violated any safety regulations? No, sir. Has she been anything other than cooperative with your crew? Stevens glanced at Eleanor, who maintained her serene composure. She refused to move seats. To move from her assigned first-class seat to economy? The seat she paid for 3 days ago with her personal American Express Centurion card? The business travelers in rows 2 and 3 shifted uncomfortably. They recognized that card. Only the ultra-wealthy qualified for Centurion status. Jessica Martinez finally found her voice. Mr. Washington, sir, we didn't know. She didn't say. Marcus's response was swift and brutal. Miss Martinez, are you suggesting that my mother should have identified herself as the CEO's mother to receive basic human dignity? Silence. Are you suggesting that other passengers who aren't related to executives deserve different treatment? Jessica's career was disintegrating in real time. She said nothing. 4:16 p.m. Let me be crystal clear, Marcus continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the aircraft. I run this airline, but more importantly, I run it with the expectation that every passenger, regardless of their connections, their appearance, or their background, receives identical service. The live stream had reached 100,000 viewers. #CEOS Mother was trending worldwide. News outlets were already picking up the story. Eleanor finally spoke. Marcus, I want you to know that Officer Rodriguez has been professional throughout this situation. He's simply been following orders from his superiors. Rodriguez looked at Eleanor with gratitude and respect. Thank you, Mom. Officer Rodriguez, I appreciate your professionalism. Marcus's tone shifted when he addressed his mother. Mom, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Given what you've experienced today, do you feel comfortable flying with this crew? Eleanor looked around the cabin. Jessica refuses to make eye contact. Tom Bradley sweating profusely. Captain Stevens holding the phone like it might bite him. Marcus, I think there are some valuable learning opportunities here. That was Eleanor Washington even in her moment of vindication. She was thinking about education rather than revenge. 4:17 p.m. Captain Stevens. Marcus's voice returned to business mode. You have two choices. Option 1. We handle this as a training opportunity, with appropriate consequences and systemic changes. Option 2. This becomes a federal discrimination case, a media circus, and a congressional hearing on airline bias. Stevens found his voice. Mr. Washington, we want to handle this internally. We'll make this right. Good choice. Here's what's going to happen immediately. Miss Martinez, you're suspended pending a full investigation. Captain Stevens, you'll report to headquarters Monday morning for remedial training. Miss Carter, you'll coordinate with our legal and HR departments. The live stream chat was moving too fast to read. Reporters were probably already booking flights to LAX. Eleanor reached into her purse and withdrew the business card she'd been holding. Her own card, with her title. Eleanor Washington, Board Chair, Washington Holdings. She'd never needed to use it. Her dignity had been enough. Marcus, she said softly, I think we've made our point. Can we go to New York now? I have a board meeting in the morning. A pause. Then Marcus laughed, the first warm sound in the entire ordeal. Yes, ma'am. Flight 447. You're cleared for immediate departure. Mom, I'll see you at the meeting tomorrow. We have some policies to discuss. 4:18 p.m. Marcus Washington's voice commanded the aircraft like a boardroom. Before we proceed, I want everyone to understand the magnitude of what just occurred. The live stream had reached 125,000 viewers. Major news networks were already running breaking news alerts. American Airlines CEO's mother discriminated against on company flight. American Airlines generated $52.8 billion in revenue last year. Our market capitalization stands at $11.2 billion. We employ 130,000 people worldwide. Marcus's tone was surgical, precise. What happened to my mother in the last 20 minutes could cost this company between $50 and $100 million in legal settlements, stock price impact, and reputation damage. Eleanor watched Captain Stevens process those numbers. His pension, his career, his family's future, all hanging in the balance. But more importantly, Marcus continued, this incident represents a systemic failure that affects thousands of passengers every day. People who don't have my phone number. People who can't call the CEO when they're treated like criminals for existing while black. Patricia Carter was frantically taking notes, already calculating damage control strategies. 4:20 p.m. Captain Stevens, I want you to walk me through your decision-making process. And remember, 125,000 people are listening, and this conversation is being recorded for legal purposes. Stevens cleared his throat, his voice barely audible. Mr. Washington, when we have seating disputes, standard protocol is to defer to crew judgment. Stop. Marcus's voice cut like a blade. You examined my mother's valid boarding pass, her valid identification, and her valid payment method. At what point did crew judgment override documented evidence? Silence stretched across the cabin like a held breath. I'm waiting, Captain. Stevens looked around desperately. Jessica had literally turned her back. Tom Bradley was studying his shoes like they contained the secrets of the universe. Sir, there was an assumption. An assumption based on what, Captain Stevens? The question everyone knew was coming. The question that would define careers, lawsuits, and congressional hearings. Stevens couldn't answer. The truth that he'd looked at Eleanor Washington and seen someone who didn't belong in first class would end his career instantly. 4:22 p.m. "Let me help you out, Captain," Marcus said with devastating calm. Federal Aviation Administration data shows that American Airlines receives 347% more discrimination complaints per passenger mile than our closest competitor. Our customer satisfaction rating among minority passengers has dropped 23% in the past 18 months. Eleanor reached into her purse and withdrew a sealed envelope marked Confidential Board Resolution 2024-127. She held it where Patricia Carter could see it clearly. Chen's eyes widened as she read the header. Whatever was in that envelope, it was corporate dynamite. These statistics aren't accidents, Captain Stevens. They represent systematic bias in our training, our policies, and our culture. What happened to my mother today is a symptom of a disease that runs through this entire organization. Marcus paused, letting that sink in. Under Federal Aviation Regulation 382.7, discrimination based on race constitutes a federal crime punishable by up to 5 years in prison and $250,000 in fines. Under Civil Rights Act, Section 1981, my mother can sue for unlimited punitive damages. Under our corporate charter, discrimination incidents can trigger immediate termination without severance. 4:24 p.m. The legal framework was crushing. Every person on that aircraft understood they were witnessing careers end in real time. But here's what's going to happen instead, Marcus continued. Because my mother, despite everything you put her through, still believes in education over elimination. Eleanor spoke for the first time in several minutes. Marcus, tell them about the envelope. She held up the sealed document. Board Resolution 2024-127, approved last month, allocates $25 million for bias prevention technology and comprehensive staff retraining. I was taking this to tomorrow's board meeting for final implementation. Patricia Carter nearly dropped her tablet. A $25 million initiative meant executive-level planning, months of preparation, and corporate-wide transformation. Today's incident, Eleanor continued calmly, just became our pilot program. 4:26 p.m. Marcus took control again. Here's your choice, Captain Stevens. You can continue pretending this was a misunderstanding, in which case our legal department will file federal discrimination charges Monday morning. Or you can acknowledge what really happened and become part of the solution. Stevens looked around the cabin. 125,000 people watched. His crew avoided eye contact. His career balanced on a knife's edge. Mr. Washington, we made serious errors in judgment today. What kind of errors, Captain? The moment of truth. Stevens looked at Eleanor Washington, dignified, composed, devastatingly gracious, and finally understood the magnitude of his failure. Sir, we discriminated against your mother based on racial assumptions. We violated federal regulations, company policy, and basic human decency. The live stream chat exploded with approval. Sometimes accountability was more powerful than revenge. 4:28 p.m. Miss Martinez, Marcus's voice found the flight attendant cowering in the galley. Do you have anything to add? Jessica Martinez had been with American Airlines for 3 years. 3 years of treating passengers differently based on their appearance, their accents, their perceived social status. She'd never been called on it before. Mr. Washington, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Wrong about what specifically? I judged your mother before knowing anything about her. I treated her like she didn't belong because... Jessica's voice cracked. Because she was black. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Raw, honest, devastating. Eleanor spoke quietly. "Thank you for your honesty, Miss Martinez." That took courage. Even in her moment of vindication, Eleanor Washington was still teaching. 4:30 p.m. "Here are the immediate consequences," Marcus announced. "Miss Martinez, you're suspended without pay pending investigation. You'll undergo 40 hours of bias training before reinstatement consideration. Captain Stevens, you'll report to headquarters Monday for remedial training and performance review. Mr. Bradley, Miss Carter, same requirements." Officer Rodriguez stepped forward. "Mr. Washington, if I may, your mother was professional and dignified throughout this entire situation. She never raised her voice, never became combative. She handled this with more grace than I've seen in 20 years of security work." "Thank you, Officer Rodriguez. That's my mother." Pride and love carried through Marcus's voice, reminding everyone that beneath the corporate authority was a son who'd watched his mother be humiliated. 4:32 p.m. Eleanor finally stood from seat 1A. At 67, she moved with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades in boardrooms, navigating corporate politics while maintaining her dignity. "Ladies and gentlemen," she addressed the entire cabin, "I want you to understand something important. This isn't about revenge or punishment. This is about ensuring that what happened to me today never happens to anyone else." She opened the envelope and withdrew a single document. Board Resolution 2024-127 establishes the Eleanor Washington Protocol for Bias Prevention in Customer Service. AI-powered monitoring systems, real-time discrimination reporting, zero-tolerance policies with immediate consequences. Patricia Carter was frantically typing, probably updating corporate headquarters about the public relations nightmare turning into a transformation opportunity. "But most importantly," Eleanor continued, "this protocol ensures that every passenger, regardless of their race, their appearance, or their connections, receives identical treatment. Because dignity isn't a privilege. It's right." 4:34 p.m. Marcus's voice returned, softer now. "Mom, I'm proud of how you handled this, but I'm furious that you had to. That's why we're going to fix it, sweetheart." The live stream had reached 150,000 viewers. Eleanor Washington Protocol was trending worldwide. Congressional offices were already drafting inquiry letters. "Captain Stevens, you have one more chance to make this right. What are you going to do differently when my mother isn't on your aircraft?" Stevens looked directly at Eleanor. "Mrs. Washington, I promise you every passenger will be treated with the respect you showed us today, even when we didn't deserve it." Eleanor smiled. "Captain Stevens, that's all anyone can ask for." 4:35 p.m. "Flight 447, you're cleared for departure," Marcus announced. "Mom, I'll see you at the board meeting tomorrow. We have an airline to fix." Eleanor settled back into seat 1A, her rightful seat, as the aircraft finally began to move. The live stream slowly ended as phones were put away for takeoff. But the real story was just beginning. By the time Flight 447 reached cruising altitude, the Eleanor Washington Protocol had become a case study in corporate accountability, family values, and the power of quiet dignity over loud anger. Some battles are won with lawsuits, others are won with grace. Eleanor Washington had just proven which approach changes the world. 6 months later. American Airlines. Headquarters, Dallas. The conference room buzzed with quiet energy. Eleanor Washington sat at the head of the mahogany table, reviewing implementation reports from the Eleanor Washington Protocol. 6 months since Flight 447, and the transformation was measurable. Discrimination complaints down 67%, reported Chief Operating Officer Sarah Carter Patricia's replacement after her demotion to training coordinator. Customer satisfaction among minority passengers increased 31%, The AI monitoring system has flagged and corrected 1,247 potential bias incidents before they escalated. Marcus Washington smiled at his mother from across the table. The quarterly board meeting had become their favorite collaboration. "Stock price?" Eleanor asked, ever the practical businesswoman. "Up 18% since implementation. Investors appreciate transparency and proactive reform," replied CFO David Kim. "The Eleanor Washington Protocol is being adopted by Delta, United, and Southwest. We're licensing the technology for $50 million annually." Eleanor nodded approvingly. Accountability creates profitability. Always has. The individual consequences. Jessica Martinez sat in the American Airlines Training Academy in Phoenix, completing her final bias recognition certification. 40 hours of intensive education had transformed her understanding of unconscious prejudice. Her instructor, Dr. Maria Gonzalez, reviewed Jessica's case study analysis. "Excellent work identifying microaggressions in customer service scenarios. You've come a long way from your suspension." Jessica looked up from her workbook. "Dr. Gonzalez, I want to ask you something. How do I make sure I never treat another passenger the way I treated Mrs. Washington?" "What do you think you learned from that experience?" "That dignity isn't earned. It's automatic. Every passenger deserves respect regardless of what I think I know about them." Jessica paused. "I judged Mrs. Washington based on her race, and I was completely wrong. But even if she hadn't been the CEO's mother, I would have been just as wrong." Dr. Gonzalez smiled. "That's exactly the insight we're looking for." "Congratulations, Miss Martinez. You're ready for reinstatement." Captain Stevens' transformation. Captain Mike Stevens stood before a room of 200 American Airlines pilots at the quarterly safety and cultural competency meeting. His story had become required training material. "6 months ago, I nearly destroyed my 15-year career by letting bias override evidence," Stevens told the room. "I looked at Eleanor Washington and made assumptions based on her race. I violated federal regulations, company policy, and my own moral code." The room was silent. Every pilot knew the story. But here's what I learned. Mrs. Washington could have destroyed me. Instead, she chose to educate me. She turned my worst moment into a teaching opportunity that's changing our entire industry. Stevens clicked to the next slide. Discrimination complaint, statistics showing dramatic improvement. The Eleanor Washington Protocol isn't just policy, it's a promise. Every passenger gets identical treatment, regardless of their connections or appearance. Because the woman in seat 32B deserves the same respect as the woman in 1A. The technology revolution. At Denver International Airport, the new AI bias detection system quietly monitored gate interactions. When United Airlines gate agent Robert Kim spoke dismissively to an elderly Latina passenger about her boarding group, the system immediately flagged the interaction. Supervisor Angela Torres received an instant alert on her tablet. Potential bias incident detected, Gate A7, review required. She arrived within 2 minutes. "Mr. Kim, I need to speak with you privately." Angela reviewed the AI analysis. Elevated voice patterns, dismissive body language, different treatment compared to previous passengers. "Based on our monitoring system, you may have unconsciously treated Mrs. Herrera differently than other passengers. Let's review the interaction together." The technology developed from Eleanor's experience was preventing thousands of discrimination incidents across the industry. Congressional Impact Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stood at the House Transportation Committee podium, holding up a tablet showing the Flight 447 live stream. The Eleanor Washington incident exposed systematic bias in airline customer service, but more importantly, it demonstrated how corporate leadership can drive meaningful change. She clicked to her next slide. Industry-wide discrimination statistics showing significant improvement. The Washington Protocol has become the gold standard for bias prevention in transportation. I'm introducing the Eleanor Washington Act to make these standards mandatory across all federally regulated industries." Committee Chairman Peter DeFazio nodded approvingly. Mrs. Washington's response, choosing education over litigation, created more systemic change than any lawsuit could have achieved. The ripple effect. At Harvard Business School, Professor Janet Carter presented the Flight 447 case study to her executive leadership program. What makes Eleanor Washington's approach remarkable isn't that she had power, it's how she used it. She could have demanded immediate firings, massive financial settlements, public humiliation of the crew. A student raised her hand. "Professor Carter, wouldn't punishment have been more satisfying?" Satisfying for whom? Eleanor Washington wasn't interested in personal satisfaction. She was interested in systematic change. Punishment affects individuals. Education affects systems. Professor Carter clicked on the outcome statistics. The Eleanor Washington Protocol has prevented an estimated 12,000 discrimination incidents across the airline industry. How much would traditional punishment have prevented? The answer was obvious: 0. Jessica Martinez's redemption. Jessica Martinez returned to active duty on American Airlines Flight 1247, Los Angeles to Chicago. Her first passenger interaction was with an elderly black gentleman in a wheelchair. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson. I'm Jessica, and I'll be taking care of you today. How can I make your flight more comfortable?" She helped him with his carry-on, ensured his wheelchair was properly stored, and provided extra assistance during boarding. The AI monitoring system recorded the interaction. Exemplary customer service, no bias indicators detected. "During the flight, Mr." Johnson pressed the call button. "Miss Jessica, I wanted to thank you. I've been flying for 40 years, and you've shown me more kindness in 10 minutes than I usually receive in entire flights." Jessica smiled genuinely. "Mr. Johnson, that's exactly how every passenger should be treated, every single time." She thought of Eleanor Washington's grace under pressure and understood, dignity transforms everyone it touches. The Eleanor Washington Foundation. Eleanor stood before 500 customer service representatives from across corporate America at the first annual Dignity in Service Conference. The Eleanor Washington Foundation had become a $10 million initiative supporting bias training across industries. 6 months ago, I was humiliated on an airplane because someone made assumptions about who I was based on my appearance, Eleanor began. Today, that experience has created systematic change affecting millions of customers. She clicked to her presentation. Retail chains, hotel groups, financial institutions, healthcare systems, all implementing Washington Protocol training. But this isn't about me. This is about the grandmother in Alabama who doesn't get followed around department stores anymore. The young father in Detroit who receives the same car loan rate as his white colleague. The student in Phoenix who's treated with respect when she enters a bank. The audience customer service managers from Fortune 500 companies listened intently. Dignity isn't expensive. Bias is. Discrimination costs companies billions in lost customers, legal settlements, and reputation damage. Respect costs nothing and generates everything. The family legacy. Eleanor and Marcus Washington walked through the American Airlines terminal at LAX 6 months after Flight 447. Employees recognized them immediately, not with fear, but with pride. "Mrs. Washington," called out gate agent Maria Santos. "Thank you for the training program. It's helped me understand my unconscious biases and become a better employee." Eleanor smiled warmly. "Thank you for embracing the change, Maria." That takes courage. As they walked toward their gate, Marcus spoke quietly. "Mom, you turned the worst day into the best outcome." "How do you do that?" Eleanor paused at the departure board, watching families reunite and business travelers rush to connections. "Marcus, when someone shows you who they are, you have 2 choices: punish them for it or help them become better. Punishment feels good for a moment. Education feels good forever." She looked at her son with pride. Besides, we're not just running an airline. We're building a world where everyone's daughter can travel with dignity. The new standard Flight 447's legacy lived on in every interaction, every policy, every training session across the industry. Eleanor Washington had transformed personal humiliation into systematic progress. The Eleanor Washington Protocol wasn't just corporate policy. It was proof that quiet dignity could move mountains, change industries, and rewrite the rules of how people treat each other. Some revolutions start with protests. Others start with grace under pressure. Eleanor Washington chose grace and changed everything. 1 year later, the legacy. Eleanor Washington stood at the podium of the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, accepting the Corporate Leadership Award for Systemic Change. At 68, she had become the unlikely face of dignified resistance. "This award doesn't belong to me," Eleanor said, looking out at an audience of civil rights leaders, corporate executives, and ordinary citizens. "It belongs to every person who chooses education over elimination, grace over grievance, progress over punishment." In the front row, Marcus Washington beamed with pride. Behind him, Jessica Martinez sat with her supervisor badge, now leading bias prevention training for American Airlines West Coast operations. Captain Stevens had been promoted to Chief Safety Officer, where he implemented the Washington Protocol across all flight operations. His personal transformation had become legendary within the company. Flight 447 taught us that real power isn't the ability to destroy your enemies, Eleanor continued. Real power is the ability to transform them into allies. The global impact. The Eleanor Washington story had transcended American Airlines. The original live stream had been viewed 50 million times across social platforms. The hashtag Eleanor Washington Protocol was used globally whenever customers faced discrimination. In London, Heathrow Airport implemented Washington Protocol training after British Airways experienced their own viral discrimination incident. A passenger tweeted, "Remember Eleanor Washington dignity for everyone, always." In Tokyo, Japan Airlines restructured their customer service policies using the Washington framework. Cultural sensitivity training became mandatory for all customer-facing employees. In Sao Paulo, LATAM Airlines executives studied the case as an example of crisis transformation. The question, "What would Eleanor Washington do?" became their standard for handling bias complaints. The technology evolution Dr. Sarah Kim, Chief Technology Officer at Dignity Analytics, the company licensing the Washington Protocol AI, presented quarterly results to the board. Our bias detection technology is now active in 847 airports worldwide, 2,300 retail locations, and 156 healthcare systems. We've prevented an estimated 89,000 discrimination incidents in the past year. She clicked to the next slide. Customer satisfaction scores for participating companies have increased an average of 28%. Employee retention in customer service roles is up 41%. Legal settlements related to discrimination are down 73%. Marcus Washington, serving on Dignity Analytics Advisory Board, smiled. "My mother always said that treating people with respect was good business. Now we have the data to prove it." Personal transformations. Jessica Martinez had become the most requested bias prevention trainer in the airline industry. Her presentation, "From Prejudice to Progress, My Flight 447 Journey," was booked solid for 2 years. "I was the villain in Eleanor Washington's story," Jessica told audiences of customer service representatives. "But she didn't treat me like a villain. She treated me like someone who could learn and grow. That choice changed my entire life." After each presentation, attendees approached Jessica with their own stories of unconscious bias. The conversation she'd started by admitting her mistakes had grown into a movement of honest self-reflection. Captain Stevens had written a memoir, Grounded: How One Flight Taught Me to Fly Right. All proceeds went to the Eleanor Washington Foundation's scholarship program for minority aviation students. The continuing mission. Eleanor Washington, now serving on the boards of 6 major corporations, had made bias prevention her life's work. The Eleanor Washington Institute at Stanford Business School trained the next generation of ethical leaders. We measure success not by the discrimination we punish, but by the discrimination we prevent, Eleanor told her graduate students. Every time someone chooses respect over prejudice, we've succeeded. Her course, Dignity as Corporate Strategy, had a 2-year waiting list. Fortune 500 CEOs regularly consulted her on crisis management and cultural transformation. The next generation. At Reagan National Airport, 8-year-old Maya Johnson watched her grandmother board an American Airlines flight to visit family in Atlanta. The gate agent helped with her carry-on and ensured her favorite aisle seat. Maya's grandmother remembered when flying while black meant preparing for humiliation. Now it meant expecting dignity. "Grandma, why are you crying?" Maya asked. "Happy tears, baby. Just happy tears for how far we've come." The Eleanor Washington Protocol hadn't just changed corporate policy, it had changed generational expectations. Children like Maya would grow up assuming respect, not hoping for it. The enduring question. Eleanor Washington's story posed a fundamental challenge to anyone who had ever faced injustice. What do you do with your pain? Do you weaponize it into anger? Or transform it into progress? Eleanor had chosen transformation. Her decision on Flight 447 to educate rather than humiliate had created ripple effects that would protect millions of people she would never meet. Your turn. Have you witnessed discrimination in your travels, your workplace, your community? Have you been treated unfairly because of who you are or how you look? Eleanor Washington's story proves that one person's dignified response can change entire systems. You don't need to be a CEO's mother to demand respect. You don't need connections to create change. You just need courage. Share your story in the comments below. Every voice matters in creating a world where dignity isn't negotiable. Hit that subscribe button for Black Tales Stories, where we celebrate quiet courage changing the world, one story at a time. And remember Eleanor Washington's words, "Real power isn't the ability to destroy your enemies. Real power is the ability to transform them into allies." Because sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to let hatred make you hateful. The flight continues. The destination is dignity for all.